In your experience, when is the best time to invest in a CFO versus a fractional CFO? And what do you see as kind of the right person or the right persona? Maybe when you've come in, who've brought it to that phase of a couple years before IPO versus the next person who comes in to then take it public over, a 2-3 year period.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think, like a lot of these things, the answer is, right, it depends. And I think one of the things it depends a lot on is the CEO. What does that person need, right? So I think and again, I come in usually when companies are kind of tracking toward that 100 million, run rate, and they're on a path to a potential IPO. That's usually when they, I get called in. And at that point in time, the CFO is already always in the door. So the CFOs I see, if you're planning 2 to 5 years out, like that person is typically in the seat. I mean, again, it's not like a hard and fast rule by any means. There's not like a specific revenue threshold or something. But I do think it's important to have that person that you think can make the transition through the IPO several years, ideally, somewhere, again, there's no hard science to this, but in that 2 to 5 runway prior to an exit event, an IPO event, to have the CFO. Now, prior to that, I think, what I see, and again, I'm not usually in the room at this point, but what my, CEO founders have done historically is that they, focus on kind of, we want basic accounting services. We want accurate, books and records. We want, budgeting, forecasting, and that persona a lot of times is somebody that's out of, accounting, or maybe in a larger, finance function. They kind of have sort of a position that maybe they're looking to scale up. So they take a smaller company role because they have a bigger scope of responsibilities. Obviously, a lot of those people are hopeful that they'll be able to be considered for that CFO role when that, aperture widens. Frequently, what I've seen is that that's not the case, but not always, right? Some people can make that transition, but a lot of times, that you need to go out and make that hire. And it's harder to get that hire too far in advance of a liquidity event, because, the market is still super tight for sort of world-class, CFOs that have been there, done that, taken a company public. I mean, that's a whole skill set, right? Because at that point, you're really looking for somebody that not just, can obviously close the books, right? You're looking for somebody that really is, a strategic partner to the CEO that can help think through, again, if there's M&A on the table, potentially sort of how to think through that, how to talk to the investor base, right? I mean, a huge piece of this is being able to interact with, the buy-siders, the sell-siders, the investor base. And it's really someone that drives a culture of accountability, throughout the organization. And I find a lot of CEOs really benefit from that, because when they finally bring a CFO in, now you have somebody that's got a seat at the table, right? That can really, challenge and have high level conversations with the rest of the executive team. And it, creates for, I think when it's done well, it creates for a much better, outcome for all of the executive team, because you really have somebody that is now, driving to accountability and results, and helping have those conversations.
And that's a really interesting context for companies that are, call it in the 5 to 50 million of revenue, which is, there is a tendency to find somebody and focus on hiring somebody who can close the books. Mm-hmm. But the flip side is, if you can empower that person to, drive a culture of accountability at the earlier stages,
yes,
that's a win-win.